The Southern Avenger, that avid defender of hierarchy and totalitarianism, has had a lot to say about the left.
Anarchist communism.
And yet has had nothing to say to the left. So maybe it's time the fight was brought to him. Conservatives, reactionaries, anarcho-capitalists, fascists, corporatists, and neoliberals. While they may vary on social issues such as reproductive rights and gay marriage, there's one thing that they all support unanimously.
The free market. Free market. Free market.
I think Raj Patel explains why the right-wingers are such enthusiastic supporters of the free market.
Well, if you think that markets are about freedom, you think markets are about rights and about liberties, then here's a thought experiment for you. Imagine a world where everyone is given little tickets, and on those tickets are freedoms, rights, if you will. You have the right to drive a red sports car. You have the right to decent health care. You have the right to visit your ailing grandmother. You have the right to go on holiday to Tenerife. Now, you may not want to cash in these tickets, but if you have those tickets, those are the things that you can do. And if you don't have tickets and you try to do something that's not on one of your tickets, then the police will intervene. Now, what Cohen suggests is actually those tickets are a very specific kind of money. And the world in which we live, really, I mean, you can imagine the world that we're living in as where those tickets are replaced by dollar bills. Because the more dollar bills you have, the freer you are to visit your sick aunt, the freer you are to have good health care, or to go on holiday to Tenerife. But if you don't have those tickets, you are fundamentally unfree. You are deprived of rights. And you are, through this market, freedom is just another word for the poorest Americans. Freedom is just another word for nothing that they can afford.
And who do reactionaries such as Jack Hunter praise as free market champion?
Ronald Reagan.
The president who boasted about how he had doubled tariff protections to big business and used 2.7% of the GDP to bail out the banks after the savings and loan crisis. Of course, there are plenty of other reasons for his kind to shower Reagan with hero worship. Under the Reagan administration, productivity went up 40% and wages only went up 1% because he refused to raise the minimum wage. Reagan also refused to sign the Civil Rights Act in '67 when he was governor of California, but he did sign the most liberal abortion bill in U.S. history while governor. Which means that, like Sarah Palin and the Bridge to Nowhere, Reagan and Hunter were both for abortion before they were against it. Under the Reagan presidency, incarceration rates tripled. He also legalized private prisons. The stock value of a private prison is determined by how many people they have in cages. Today, we have the highest incarceration rate in the world. Reagan's involvement in the Iran-Contra scandal, which even Reagan's Secretary of State, George Shultz, said he signed off on the operations for. The invasion of Grenada, Reagan's support of murderous Third World dictators such as Pol Pot, Nikolai Ceausescu, Saddam Hussein, and Israel Haq. Not to mention,
he broke unions, but he didn't use death squads and terror squads. He broke them using consultation corporations, advisory corporations, spending hundreds of millions of dollars showing companies how to break unions. They broke unions by instituting one of the most restrictive and prohibitive and difficult laws, the Taft-Hartley law, that one goes back to 1940s, which make union organizing in America so very difficult. They've tried a number of times to limit our constitutional rights, the rights of free speech, the right of government accountability. They've cut inheritance taxes. They've cut the capital gains taxes. They've cut corporate taxes. They've abolished the progressive income tax. He rolled back the social democracy that had been developing in the late 60s and through the 70s. He cut back, undermined human services. He staffed agencies and courts with people in government who do not believe in government and do not even carry out the programs that Congress voted in. So within the American context, he's done quite a few things, short of what Hitler and Mussolini did as a final solution.
Speaking of the right wing, Reagan and Bush Sr. both had actual Nazis serve on their campaign staff. Look it up. And why not? after all the economic policies advocated by Jack Hunter in particular and the right wing in general are the same economic policies that have been imposed under fascist regimes. But why take my word for it?
According to figures supplied by the Italian press itself, taxes on wages were introduced. Regulations were instated against minimum wages. The minimum wage law was abolished, in other words. There was no more increased pay for overtime. In some regions, sanitary and safety regulations were dropped. Occupational safety regulations were eliminated in factories. In many areas, child labor was reintroduced. Wage taxes were instituted. Municipal poll taxes were doubled, and the non-profit mutual assistance and insurance associations that had existed before the Nazis came to power and the free labor unions were abolished. Their funds were taken over by private insurance companies that charged more while paying out smaller benefits. In both Italy and Germany, the process of privatization. Does that sound familiar? Ronald Reagan's dream. State-owned enterprises such as power plants, steel mills, banks, railways, insurance firms, steamship companies, and shipyards were handed over to private ownership for a song. Like gifts. Corporate taxes were reduced by half in both Italy and Germany. Does that sound familiar? Another Reagan achievement.
Want another example? How about the privatization of Social Security, which was done under the Pinochet regime? The same man who was responsible for Social Security privatization in Chile, Jose Pinera, now works for the Cato Institute. Today, every right-winger from Ron Paul to John Boehner keep telling us that Social Security is broke and that it's a burden on our deficit, despite the $2.7 trillion surplus and the fact that it had nothing to do with the deficit. The Southern Avengers kind simply want excuses to hand over our money to the oligarchs. Jack Hunter constantly complains about entitlement or social welfare, yet says nothing about corporate welfare. We spend $59 billion a year on social welfare programs, but over $92 billion on corporate subsidies. Not to mention the fact that 25% of the wealthiest corporations have paid no tax whatsoever in the past few years. After the election, Hunter posted a tweet stating that marijuana has been legalized in Washington and Colorado. Slavery is sure to follow. Obviously, he was being facetious, but a look at recent history shows that federal raids are sure to follow. The fact is that no one will be able to use cannabis without fear of legal reprimand until it's legalized on the federal level. So why do people like Jack Hunter so vehemently oppose the federal government? I think political scientist Corey Robbins sums it up succinctly.
The contemporary conservative movement, and in this regard it's in keeping with, a certain part of the conservative movement historically, is very much appealing to the principles of opposition to national political power, defense of local and state privileges. But the reason why that is that at least throughout most of the 20th century, the national state has been seen as the instrument or the arm of these democratic movements from below. And of course that goes back to the Civil War. The abolitionist movement turned to the national state to abolish and break the chattel slavery. The labor movement did the exact same thing in order to try to bring to bear the power of the national state over modern corporations and employers. The civil rights movement did the same in the 60s. So conservatives have good reason to oppose the national state because to their mind, and I think they're somewhat accurate in this perception, the national state has really been the instrument for democratic emancipation.
Hunter says that he's opposed to government institutions being able to discriminate, but thinks that businesses should be allowed to discriminate on any grounds they wish. Conveniently, he wants to reduce the size of government by handing over public institutions to business. He says that he wears the Confederate flag because he's simply proud of his history, warts and all. Have you ever seen a Nazi flag on a German guy's wall only to hear him say, "It's because we are proud of our history"? Hunter says that talking about race disgusts him. This is after posting a video titled "No Apologies for Slavery," which he promptly removed after a fellow communist confronted him about it. He said that Al Sharpton publicly calling for the police to arrest George Zimmerman was every bit as detestable as the Klan. So he's basically stating that a black man demanding that a murderer be apprehended is just as bad as raping, lynching, shooting, and firebombing innocent people because of their skin color. In the 1850s, conservatives were defending slavery. In the 1950s, they were defending segregation. Apparently, they've not changed much.